Friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie The Prosecutor in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like, and if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we're going to discuss in today's video is The Prosecutor. So, we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch The Prosecutor film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining. So you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So let's start the video. The Prosecutor is a 2024 action thriller film, directed and co-produced by Donnie Yen, who also stars in the film alongside an ensemble cast that includes Julian Cheung, Michael Huace, Francis Ng, and MC Chung Tin Fu. Loosely based on a real-life 2016 drug trafficking case, the story follows a police detective turned public prosecutor, Yen, who seeks to overturn the conviction of a misjudged defendant, Mason Feng, entangled with a crime syndicate led by a law-educated drug lord, Julian Cheung. Driven by the Supreme People's Procuratorate and co-produced by Hong Kong's Mandarin Motion Pictures and China's Shanghai Huace film, the project was initially conceived as a legal drama film. The screenplay began development by Wong during the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2023, co-producer Raymond Wong approached Donnie Yen for the lead role, leading to a reimagining of the film as a hybrid of action and legal thriller. Pre-production started in May 2023, with principal photography taking place from October 2023 to February 2024 in Hong Kong. Japanese action choreographer Takahito Ouchi served as the film's action director. The film was theatrically released in Hong Kong and China on 21 and 27 December 2024, respectively. It secured 3 nominations in the 43rd Hong Kong Film Awards and received generally positive reviews from critics, who praised the action, innovative genre blend, and performances of the cast, particularly Donnie Yen and Michael Huace. But the screenplay and the lack of exploration of themes regarding justice in Hong Kong were subject to criticism. The box office performance was also considered satisfactory, and the film became the 5th highest-grossing Hong Kong film of 2024. Plot: Police Detective Fok Chi-ho leads his team in the pursuit of an armed robbery gang. Although they capture all of the surviving gang members, the leader leaves no trace linking him to the crime and is released without conviction. This incident causes Fok to lose faith in policing, prompting him to leave the force and study law. 7 years later, Fok joins the Department of Justice and becomes a public prosecutor. Under the mentorship of pupil Master Bao, he receives his first case involving drug smuggling. The defendant, Ma, receives a parcel from Brazil containing a kilogram of cocaine. Ma insists he is innocent, claiming he has only lent his address to a friend, Chan, who promises him money to alleviate his family's debts. However, Ma's defense lawyer, Li, and legal executive, Ao, mislead him into believing he is likely to be convicted, urging him to plead guilty for a reduced sentence, which Ma and his grandfather, Uncle Ma, agree to. When Li approaches Fok to discuss the plea bargain, Fok finds it suspicious that the terms require Ma to take full responsibility while Chan is completely absolved. Nevertheless, Chief Prosecutor Cheung accepts the terms, believing they provide the best chance for a conviction. During detention, Ma learns from fellow inmates that Li has deceived him, causing him to reconsider his guilty plea out of fear of not seeing his grandfather again. Fok, who believes in Ma's innocence, allows him to change his plea, which dissatisfies Cheung. In the first trial, Ao and Li serve as prosecution witnesses. Despite Ma's lawyer attempting to prove that they have misled him during negotiations, his claims lack evidence and are easily dismissed. Fok begins to defend Ma and question his own witnesses. The judge attempts to stop Fok, leading to a clash where Fok argues that the prosecution should focus on those who are truly guilty rather than simply securing a conviction. This argument damages Ma's reputation with the jury, resulting in Chan being acquitted while Ma is convicted of drug smuggling and sentenced to 27 years for showing no remorse. Realizing his mistake, Fok seeks to help Uncle Ma, who initially rejects him until Fox saves him during an assassination attempt. Uncle Ma reveals to Fox that they hired Lee based on a recommendation from Lau, the owner of the restaurant where Ma works. After learning about the assassination attempt, Bao agrees to help Fox investigate, leading them to discover that Cheung has been the prosecutor in every case involving Ao. Bao infiltrates a nightclub owned by Lau and overhears a conversation revealing that Lau and Chan are half-brothers. They learn that one brother solicits people to lend their addresses for drug smuggling, while the other pretends to offer pro bono legal assistance through Li and Ao, who actually have them take the blame. Fox assists Uncle Ma in applying for an appeal, but Ma is later assassinated in a cha-chan teng. With the half-brothers as the only lead, Fox approaches other victims and eventually locates a girl willing to testify against Lau. Knowing Lau is exposed, Ao attempts to persuade him to turn himself in and take full responsibility. However, he is murdered by Sang and Tung, Ao's drug lord associates. Meanwhile, Fox confronts Cheung, discovering Cheung's innocence, and the two sets their differences aside. During their retrial, Cheung serves as the prosecutor and buys time for Fox, who seeks to locate the hiding Chan. With the help of Inspector Lee, Fox's former protege, they find and convince Chan to testify. However, they are attacked on their way to court, resulting in Lee being severely injured. Fox and Chan continue to the courthouse by MTR, encountering Sang's assassins during the ride. Fox dispatches them all and manages to reach the courthouse, where Chan delivers his testimony against Ao. Ultimately, Ma is acquitted, while Ao and his syndicate receive appropriate sentences. Cast: Donnie Yen as Fox Chi-ho, a police detective turned public prosecutor. Julian Cheung as Ao Pak-man, a law-educated drug lord who runs a barrister's chamber. Michael Huace as George Huace, a high court judge who presides over the drug smuggling case. Francis Ng as Cheung Ditlap, the chief prosecutor of the Department of Justice. MC Chung Tin Fu as Lee King Wai, a police inspector and Fox's former subordinate. Ken Cheng as Bao Ding, the pupil master of the Department of Justice production. Development. The Prosecutor is loosely based on a real-life case from 2016, involving a teenager, Ma Ka-kin, who was accused of drug trafficking and misled into pleading guilty by his defense lawyer and legal executive in exchange for absolving the second defendant, Hung Chai-him, from charges. After the case received widespread media attention, the Center for Film and Television of Supreme People's Procuratorate initiated plans to adapt it into a film and approached Mandarin Motion Pictures, ZH, and Shanghai Huace Film, ZH, marking the film as a co-production between Hong Kong and China. Initially, the film was set to be a traditional legal drama, with the Procuratorate comparing its vision to The Shawshank Redemption, 1994. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Raymond Wong and Edmund Wong, ZH, from Mandarin Motion Pictures, conducted field research to assess the potential for the adaptation, including discussions with a group of barristers and investigations into drug trafficking cases worldwide. Edmund Wong, the film's screenwriter, aimed to move away from the stereotypical courtroom dramas often depicted in television series, shifting the screenplay's focus towards crime investigation and creating the protagonist, Fox Chi-ho, a narcotics police detective who transitions to a public prosecutor to drive the story. In 2023, while in talks to produce a sequel to Flashpoint 2007, Raymond Wong showed Donnie Yen the screenplay of The Prosecutor and invited him to star as the lead. Yen initially declined, feeling unfamiliar with the legal drama genre and hesitant to develop a film that echoed the commercially successful A Guilty Conscience, 2023. However, after 2 months of continued invitations from Wong, Yen finally agreed to join on the condition that the story be rewritten in a style he was familiar with. Yen signed a deal for a total of 3 films with Mandarin Motion Pictures, which also included Ip Man 5 and a spin-off for SPL Sha Po Lang, 2005. Among the earliest creative decisions Yen made was to invite veteran actors he admired to join the cast and transform combative dialogue into actual fight scenes, such as an argument between his character and that of Francis Ng. The original screenplay featured only a few fight scenes, with most action sequences added later at the request of the production companies. Pre-production. Lau Kong and singer-songwriter MC Chung Tin Fu were the first 2 cast members confirmed for the project, with Chung being handpicked by Yen for a role he deemed suitable. During a meal, Yen recommended Chung's songs to Raymond and Edmund Wong, and suggested he be approached for acting. The film marked Cheung's first foray into action films, and he was initially hesitant to join due to concerns about his physique. Lau was cast by Yen after watching an interview of him, and discovering that his real-life experiences closely resembled those of the character Uncle Ma. Yen also invited his friends and fellow actors Ray Louis and Mark Cheng for cameo appearances, with Louis accepted the offer without learning any details about the storyline beforehand, marking his third cameo in Yen's films after Raging Fire 2021 and Sakura 2023. Kent Cheng, Sisley Choi, and Mandy Wong were cast at Yen's request, while Chu Pak Hong was chosen as the defense lawyer, as the production team aimed to utilize his ability to bring humor to courtroom scenes alongside a veteran cast. The role of Fok Chi-ho's father was initially slated for a cameo by an established actor, until Yen suggested casting his real-life father, Clister Yen, a retired police officer. Raymond Wong was initially set to portray Judge Hui, but later deemed Michael Hui more suitable for the role after further consideration. He reached out to Hui, who agreed to star in the film in exchange for just a cup of coffee after listening to Wong describe the story for 5 minutes. The 82-year-old Michael Hui initially requested action scenes to be written for him, but Yen declined his request. Wong also invited Liza Wang to make a cameo as the Secretary for Justice, explaining that Wong's casting choice was due to many secretaries of justice in Hong Kong are female. In May 2023, Mandarin Motion Pictures announced the development of a legal thriller under the working title Misjudgment at the 76th Cannes Film Festival, with Donnie Yen attached as the lead actor and Raymond Wong as the producer. Yen also served as the director and co-producer. While Wong was the primary investor, the film's budget exceeded HK $300 million. Yen made revisions to the production sets and action choreography before the production commencement based on his experiences from filming John Wick Chapter 4, 2023, aiming to elevate the film's production values to match Hollywood standards. On 27th of September, Yen confirmed that pre-production would soon be wrapped during the 10th Silk Road International Film Festival in November. Julian Cheung and MC Chung Tin Fu were announced in lead roles. Adam Pak was revealed to be part of the cast in the same month. Filming. Principal photography began in October 2023. Japanese action choreographer Takahito Aochi served as the action director. Leading a stunt team of 9, a group of Japanese stunt actors also joined the production crew. Due to language barriers, the crew initially struggled with the action choreography, requiring many scenes to be reshot, which delayed the filming schedule. Therefore, Kenji Tanigaki, a Japanese frequent collaborator of Donnie Yen, was invited to assist with coordination. Tanigaki and Yu Kong, who also portrayed a killer in the film, received action director credits. Renee Wong acted as the film's production designer, leading an all-female team of 6 art designers. The production team categorized the film sets as large, medium, and small, scheduling the largest sets to be filmed first and the smallest last. The large-scale sets included a courtroom and a set resembling the MTR, both of which had a filming period of over 2 weeks. For the courtroom set, the production design team began construction 4 months prior to filming, designing it at Xing Feng Film Studio in Sai Kung with a 1.1 scale based on a British courthouse. The MTR scene was filmed on a constructed set at Shaw Studios, featuring 1.1 scale MTR carriages, and costing over $1 million. To simulate the sensation of the train moving, the carriages were placed on tracks to create the illusion of movement during the fight scenes. Construction of the MTR set took 1.5 months and primarily used steel to enhance authenticity. A train platform set was also built, which had to be detached during the action scenes in the carriages. While shooting a scene where Yen was thrown over the shoulder by another actor on the MTR set, he sustained a neck injury and was hospitalized, although no bones were fractured. After completing the large-scale sets, the crew moved on to the medium sets, including scenes set in the Department of Justice offices where they filmed for 3 to 4 days. On 14th November, filming took place in Saiwan. Yen then took a brief hiatus to attend an awards ceremony in Singapore, and filming resumed on 19th of November in Sai Ying Pun, where Yen and MC Cheung were spotted on set. The scene shot in Sai Ying Pun and Shengwan featured a fight scene with Yen and Cheung, showcasing Phi Wong records on Bonham Strand during a chase sequence. The nightclub fight scene was initially filmed at a disco in Wan Chai. but Yen proposed reshooting the entire sequence after the first scene, finding both the set and the extras not authentic. He envisioned a set resembling high-end nightclubs in Lan Kwai Fong and suggested hiring foreign extras. The scene was ultimately shot at a private club on Westlands Road in Quarry Bay and used aerial drones for filming, featuring about 40 to 50 stunt actors performing real actions in a long take without any post-production special effects. The small sets included the lair of the drug trafficking syndicate, filmed at the abandoned Tat Tak School in Pingshan, and Uncle Ma's apartment, shot on the rooftop of a building opposite the flagship Sogo store in Causeway Bay, providing views of neon light signs. Filming spanned across January 2024 and ultimately wrapped on 6th February 2024. Post-production. Post-production spanned for 6 months. In May 2024, the film was presented at the Project Market during the 77th Cannes Film Festival, coinciding with the release of a promotional poster that appeared on the cover of Screen International. An official trailer was released in September, with Francis Ng and Kent Cheng revealed to be part of the cast. In November, Wellgo USA Entertainment acquired the North American distribution rights. A 52-minute behind-the-scenes documentary was released in January 2025, chronicling Donnie Yen's entire filmmaking process. Realix. The Prosecutor had its premiere at Tsim Sha Tsui, Hong Kong on 11th December 2024, followed by the Chinese premiere in Beijing on 15th December. The film was theatrically released in Hong Kong and China on 21 and 27th December 2024, respectively. It was also screened in competition at the 27th Far East Film Festival. Reception. Box office. The Prosecutor debuted with HK $190 million in Hong Kong, rising directly to the top of the box office and maintained its position for 6 consecutive days following its release, grossing over HK $5 million during Christmas. It accumulated over HK $18 million after 2 weeks and climbed to HK $20 million after 17 days, entering the top 10 highest-grossing Hong Kong films of 2024. The film wrapped up its third week with HK $22 million, as leading the weekly box office for 3 straight weeks and reached HK $29 million by mid-February, becoming the 5th highest-grossing 2024 Hong Kong film. Sing Tao Daily described the box office performance as impressive, Ming Pao found it satisfactory, and the Hong Kong Economic Times referred to it as a victory, although it noted that the performance was not particularly remarkable for a Donnie Yen film. In China, early screenings generated over $128 million, ranking second in the weekly box office while competing with another Hong Kong film, The Last Dance, which held the top position. The film earned over $4 million in its official opening weekend and grossed more than $27.7 million in its first week. Internationally, The Prosecutor debuted at the top of Taiwan's box office with a gross of over NT $8 million and earned over NTD $17 million in its second week, which TVBS described as a rare success for a Sinophone film in recent years. In Malaysia, the film garnered over $2 million within 3 days of its release. It went on to become the 3rd highest-grossing 2024 Chinese-language film in the country in Singapore. The film grossed over SGD $1.33 million as of February 2025, making it the highest-grossing Chinese-language film released in 2024 in the country. Critical response. The critical response of The Prosecutor was generally regarded as positive both domestically and internationally. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 93% of 29 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.8 to 10. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 66 out of 100 based on 6 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Richard Kuipers of Variety characterized The Prosecutor as a flashy combination of Hong Kong crime story and legal drama, with top-notch fighting and action scenes, and flamboyant and colorful exchanges in the courtroom, but also noted that its focus on action led to a loss of sharpness as a legal and human drama, lacking the gripping quality in recent successes like The Sparring Partner 2022 and A Guilty Conscience 2023. While its themes of justice appeared simplistic and sometimes contradictory, suggesting that the film might be treading carefully to avoid provoking censors. Jeff Ewing of Collider rated The Prosecutor 7 on 10, highlighting its intriguing genre hybrid approach and the excellent performances of Donnie Yen, Julian Cheung, MC Chung Tin Fu, and Kent Cheng. but noted that it fell short due to insufficient drama to qualify as a solid legal thriller, a lack of action to be considered a true martial arts film, and an inability to effectively balance characters from vastly different backgrounds, resulting in missed opportunities. Simon Abrams of RogerEbert.com gave the film 3.4 stars, praising its heavy-handed blend of action and legal drama that showcases Donnie Yen's action skills and charismatic persona, effectively delivering thrilling sequences with hokey one-liners and rousing action, while also exploring the theme of justice within a civic context. Edmund Lee of South China Morning Post gave The Prosecutor 3.5 stars, praising its action, particularly the thrilling opening scene in a first-person shooter style and the action-packed climax, but lamenting the lackluster portrayal of the villain played by Julian Cheung, which led the film to morph into a conventional thriller. Lee also ranked the film 16th out of the 36 Hong Kong films theatrically released in 2024. Wang Yiling of the Straits Times also gave the film 3.5 stars, describing it as an energetic but melodramatic blockbuster that features explosive action from the Donnie Yen stunt team and a strong performance by Michael Huace, while critiquing its dense yet simplistic narrative and overly dramatic elements. Tae Yek Kiak of 8 Days rated the film 3.5 stars as well, lauding the action and the face-off scenes between Donnie Yen and Michael Huace, while noting that the legal settings are underdeveloped and the villains are one-dimensional. Yet the film effectively blends genres with moments of humor and social commentary. David Ehrlich of IndieWire gave the film a B, also lamenting that the legal case struggles to match the same intensity as the action sequences, and fails to adequately explore the systemic corruption harming Hong Kong's lower class in a hurried and ham-fisted narrative, while also crediting Donnie Yen for venturing into a new genre despite his age and delivering a charismatic performance. James Marsh of Deadline Hollywood offered a negative review, criticizing the film as a slickly polished slice of mainstream entertainment, with action sequences that felt like late additions, forced in after Donnie Yen's involvement, which failed to meet the expectations of the action fanbase, while it also inadequately addressed the critical issues surrounding the Hong Kong national security laws and the challenges within the legal sector, making its exploration of justice seem vaguely worded and far-reaching in application. Ho Siu Bun of AM 730 called the film a high-quality Hong Kong action film, acknowledging both the upsides and downsides commonly seen in the genre, complimenting Takahito Uchi's impressive action choreography and the humor in Michael Huace's performance, while noting that the dramatic elements feel laid back, with character development being too slow and unclear, and the dialogues being hilariously predictable. Alex Chung of HKZO1 called the film a strong entry in the Hong Kong action genre for its effective blend of action and drama, particularly highlighting the intense MTR fight scene reminiscent of John Wick, Chapter 4, 2023, commending the performances of the ensemble cast, especially MC Chung Tin Fu's impressive action work, while noting that the court scenes, although less exciting, still reflect Yen's effort to merge the two genres. Calvin Choi, in his opinion piece for Hong Kong Economic Times, highlighted Michael Huace's extremely authentic portrayal of a judge, noting that Huace's humor, infused with satire and conveyed through his expressions and intonations, made his performance even more impressive compared to the other characters in the film who lacked realism. 6 years ago, Hong Kong martial artist Donnie Yen told his wife that he was going to retire. He has thankfully not yet fulfilled that promise. Since 2018, Yen not only stole all of his scenes in John Wick Chapter 4, but also acted, produced, and directed 2 very entertaining action movies. The first of these 2-star vehicles, the wuxia martial arts thriller Sakra, sadly did not find its audience when it debuted 2 years ago. That earlier movie was a period piece, while The Prosecutor, a police procedural that's also a courtroom drama, takes place in the present day. These 2 recent projects are otherwise similar in their assured presentation of Yen's righteous on-screen persona. You can see Yen searching for the best ways to showcase himself in many of his recent movies and well before his hit Ip Man series. The Prosecutor sees him once again playing a paternal, demure maverick and would-be role model. As the celebrated cop-turned-prosecuting attorney Fok Chi-ho, Yen goes where he's already gone a few times before with varying degrees of success. Remember Big Brother? Falk may not play well with others, but he also knows when the Department of Justice isn't living up to their own lofty ideals. So, for most of The Prosecutor, Falk searches for evidence, argues with colleagues, and interviews anyone who might exonerate the small-time drug smuggler Ma Ka-kit, Feng Ho-young, who takes a plea bargain and is sentenced to 27 years in jail. That's not only a miscarriage of justice, but also a potentially lethal blow for Ka-kit's grandpa, Lao Kong, his only loving family member. Ka-kit's case is still rushed through the court system, not only because of an institutional need to make less work for itself, but also because some corrupt attorneys happen to be working for Ka-kit's drug-dealing boss. As he's aged, Yen's developed a more complete vision of his movie persona's identity. His apparent conviction and extra comfort with genre movie tropes and cliches makes it a lot easier for action fans to believe that we're not only watching a confident and capable star check off some more boxes in yet another competent but unmemorable programmer. Everybody in The Prosecutor helps to confirm the tough guy social critic role that Yen's rarely taken on as head-on as he does here. The bad guys talk like Dick Tracy villains, as in a random disagreement about who gets to shoot who, while the good guys mostly shake their heads at hothead Falk as he tries to change the world. K-Kid also has a disarmingly seedy backstory about his irresponsible parents, both addicts, which repeats Yen's running theory about how your environment shapes your character. Even Falk's ex-partner Lee King-wai, Julian Cheung, gets to lead a couple of the movie's characteristically solid action scenes, which were choreographed by Yen's regular collaborator Kenji Tanigaki, Twilight of the Warriors walled in. It takes a village to make Donnie Yen's point. The Prosecutor's heavy-handed nature as a combined action movie and legal thriller might test the patience of anyone who's not up for a dramatized civics lesson. Yen acts on all of his crowd-pleasing instincts, so the movie's kitchen sink logic might also disorient some viewers. Thankfully, The Prosecutor succeeds in one essential way. Each new scene adds something to the movie's inflexible but entertaining vision of an ailing society with one proven remedy: a little extra Donnie Yen energy. Yen has been perfecting his butt-kicking square routine for decades now. It shows throughout The Prosecutor, whether Fox dragging a fellow cop to safety during the opening fight's adrenaline rush climax, or saving a random heavy from being hit by an oncoming train later on. Yen's also still obsessing over how Hong Kong's criminal justice system bases so much of its decisions on, evidence. Just like he did in his uncredited 1994 directorial debut, Asian Cop High Voltage. "Where's your evidence?" he's asked in that earlier movie, to which his renegade character says, "I just feel it. I've been a cop for 10 years, give me enough time, and I'll get the proof." Now, Yen's a prosecutor, and he's still getting it since, in Fox's words, "I just got old, I can't charge ahead all the time." So he says. Yen continues charging ahead in The Prosecutor, which frequently goes hard enough to fly through its corniest lulls. The movie climaxes with a bloody subway fight that includes a couple of delightfully hokey one-liners and a lot of rousing action. Yen's often pretty good at what he does, only now the middle-aged star also looks comfortable playing himself too. The Prosecutor review, developed by China's Supreme People's Procuratorate and directed by butt-kicking luminary Donnie Yen, The Prosecutor is a bizarre mashup of courtroom procedural and action flick. It is just as keen on lionizing due process and the shining light of Chinese justice as it is on reducing civic infrastructure to smithereens in several standout bouts. But Yen, who looks undeniably good in a suit, is more convincing on his habitual fisticuff grounds than the jurisprudential ones. Yen plays Falk, a one-time hotshot cop who, leaving the force after some overzealous policing, decides to man the final gate of justice and become a public prosecutor. Like a low-carb Perry Mason with years of Brazilian jiu-jitsu behind him, trouble keeps knocking on his door. Suspecting that a young drug smuggler, Mason Young, whose case he has assigned, has pled guilty to get his higher-ups off the hook, Falk starts looking into his slippery lawyer, Ao Pak Man, Julian Cheung. Insisting his character's knees are shot and he can't do this forever, The Prosecutor lays the ground for a post-martial arts career for Yen. Not that you'd know it from undimmed reserves of inventiveness here. A hyper-dynamic initial police raid, with Yen toting a submachine gun and riot shield, flits between drone-borne third-person and first-person cops' eye mayhem. But this brio is dragged down by the convoluted and muddily dramatized legal sequences. trying to establish Fox's counterintuitive prosecuting style. It is confusing in the detail and manipulative in the summary arguments there to set up Ayu's cartoon villainy. Maybe a more grounded director, such as Johnny To, could have made an eyebrow-raising conceit like a vigilante prosecutor work. Though Yen raises fleetingly interesting points about the pliability of the justice system, he can't bend enough to reconcile the film's legal and brawling sides in a way that avoids glaring irregularities. Surely, for example, Fox's extracurricular tangling with the drug gang would have seen him immediately struck off. Yen's self-confidence as a performer may make the courtroom grandstanding appear self-righteous, but that is no bad quality out on the warpath. He even sells saying, "I object," mid-melee in the finale, as he and a knuckle-dusting thug pound a metro carriage like a steel drum. While the film may have Yen back in modern clothes, I think I should warn potential viewers expecting an author raging fire. While it has the quality action scenes we have come to expect from Yen at the Prosec, definitely leans more towards action thriller territory than being a full-blown actioner. This isn't to do the film a disservice. Also, the Prosecutor era is an exceptionally well-made film that finds Yen once again firing on all cylinders. The fact that Yen takes his time to develop the story and build to the action just means that the set pieces hit all the more harder when they happen. Clearly realizing he has to capture his audience's attention before delving into the plot, Yen kicks the Prosec off with an explosive action scene with leading a team of cops to apprehend a dangerous arms dealer. The set piece works as an excellent teaser of what's to come with an early demonstration of the excellent action design that is filtered throughout the film. It isn't only Yen's fight choreography that has adapted over time, but also in how he chooses to shoot his action. Clearly, and has learned quite a few tricks from his time in Hollywood, with the Prosecutor employing several beautifully implemented camera tricks during the action scenes that make them all stand out, ranging from paw shots, drone footage to uploads, and personal handheld footage. Yen employs them all to make sure the action stays fresh and creative. One area that the Prosecutor certainly has in common with the likes of Fajapanga and A Flashpoint is how it takes its time to allow you to get to know the characters in the situation. Now, you would never mistake the Prosecumentary with some probably thinking its views on politics and the law are simplistic. I would probably agree, as I can't see many real-life prosecutors going to the lengths that Yen does here to make sure justice is served. Still, setting the plot around the court and the life of a prosecutor makes for a pleasant change from similar cop thrillers, with this angle allowing for many dramatic face-offs, both verbal and physical. Having Yen's prosecutor being an ex-cop obviously explains why he is so adept at kicking ass. However, as much as Falk is a typical Yen hero, he is finally acknowledging his advancing age. He even comments that his reason for transitioning from a cop to a prosecutor was partly to do with getting old. Of course, even at 61, Yen is still able to pull off feats of someone half his age, which he capably demonstrates during his fight scenes. Even so, it's a nice inclusion that it makes Fowl appear more human. Working from a script from regular collaborator Edmund Wong at a Prosecutora is loosely based on a 2021 misjudgment case where the verdict was overturned by a court of appeal. I doubt they had a prosecutor beating the out of the suspects, but I appreciate Wong's attempts to make the plot relevant. Taking that basis, a prosecutor focuses on the case of a young man, Ma Cockett, Mason Fun, who was arrested on drug trafficking charges. Incorrectly advised by his shady lawyer, OPAC man Julian Cheung, to plead guilty for a reduced sentence, the young man instead finds himself serving 27 years. Already suspicious about the case, Fox starts his own investigation into the case, dragging in his colleague Bowing Ken Chang, as well as Chief Prosecutor Yu, Francis Ang, who initially doesn't have much faith in Fox's skills as a prosecutor. Through their investigation, they begin to unravel a larger conspiracy that involves a local drug trafficking syndicate led by Tong, Mark Chang, and Sang-Rae Liu, both of who have ties to OPAC Man in order to clear Cockett's name. Falk ends up directly in the drug traffickers' firing line with him, not only having to fight in the courts, but through the busy streets of Hong Kong as well, playing almost like an updated take now, writing Rangza 1986. Yen seems to care as much about the judicial part of the story as much as he does the action, with the first half of the film mostly being focused on the more dramatic aspects of the plot. It is incredibly important to have a cast that can command attention, with Yan casting two of Hong Kong's best actors. I had worried that Francis Tsang and Ken Chang would be underused, but each of them get their chances to shine, getting to chew on some quality, albeit jargon-heavy, dialogue. I was especially pleased with the amount of screen time afforded to Chang, who was once again his amiable best. Ang isn't afforded the same level of exposure, but as always makes an impression with one particular scene between him and Yan, even going so far to inject some humor into what is an otherwise serious plotline. The fact that the chord-based scenes also feature an appearance from Hong Kong movie legend Michael, who shouldn't be overlooked, with him bringing a sense of gravitas to his role that may not have come with a lesser actor. While who isn't given a great deal to do, as expected, he still manages to be a scene stealer. Julian Cheung doesn't get as much to do as Ang or Chang. Although he is surprisingly good as the slimy lawyer OPAC man, Rai Lu and Mark Chang always add value, with Lu clearly having fun as drug runner, saying with him, even affecting a whispery, raspy voice during proceedings. Similarly to the two Chanjins, Lu never gets to physically face off against Yen. That is instead left to their deadly right-hand man, played by Kang Yu. While it's great to see Kang's involvement, it would have been nice to see and face off against an opponent he hasn't fought on film previously. Still, the film gives Kang an interesting look, with him being a particularly tough opponent that more than puts Yen through his paces. One standout set piece has Kang trying to kill Yan, and a witness in a multi-story car park with Yan's Falk having to jump from floor to floor, while at the same time dodging Kang's car as he tries to knock him and the witness down. Mainly a chase scene. It works more as an introduction to Kang's character, with it being obvious that he and Yan will end up facing off against each other later in the film. Before we get to Yan and Kang's face-off, there are several impressive set pieces that hold your attention and livens up the film every time there seems to be a threat of it getting bogged down in its heavy plot. Yan has brought on his regular collaborators to work on the action choreography, with Takahi being listed as the main action director along with Yan's own stunt team. This also includes some input from the legendary Kenji Taniaki. This assortment of quality behind the camera allows Yen's action to stand on its own. Standing out from seemingly similar action fare, a rooftop brawl between Yan and a seemingly unstoppable army of gangsters is a definite highlight. Not just in showcasing the fight choreography, but in how the action is shot. Yan has been clearly influenced by his time in a John Wick Chapter 4A 2023, with the camera work being extremely elaborate. Yan should also be commended in his desire to shoot the action devoid of CGI, instead focusing on the hard work of himself and his stunt team. With its assortment of technical accomplishments coupled with quality production design, it's no surprise to find out that the other Prosec reportedly 300 million Hong Kong dollars, which is roughly $38.5 million USD. Now, that may not seem a lot in comparison to a Hollywood production, but this is a serious budget for a film like the Prosecutor. With Yen as star, I would like to think that it would easily make its budget back. Some may be disappointed that of the Prosecutor era isn't the all-out action film that it was initially advertised to be. I personally enjoyed its change of pace and desire for Yan to stretch himself as an actor. It may take a somewhat simplistic view on the law. Yan never bores his audience. I can't wait to see what Yan brings us next, be it as a star or merely as director. Since the 1970s, there's always been a huge Eastern martial arts movie star. First, it was Bruce Lee. In the 80s, it was Jackie Chan. In the 90s, Jet Li, and in the late 2010s, we had Donnie Yen. No one has stepped up to the plate for our current decade, so Yan, now in his 60s, is still holding the mantle and is still creating some of the finest fight choreography of recent years. He also seems to be using some kind of anti-aging serum, because he easily passes for someone over 20 years younger. Tina, the Prosecutor, Fakaiho Don Yan, is a police detective frustrated that the criminals he is arresting keep being found not guilty. So he trains and becomes a prosecuting lawyer. Now, on his first case, Falk prosecutes a young man accused of trafficking drugs, but finds that things aren't what they seem. Whilst in contact with his police friends, Falk uncovers a corruption link between the drug mafia and the lead prosecutor at the Department of Justice. Taking matters into his own hands, he endeavors to prove the innocence of the man he has imprisoned. Even if that means putting his own life on the line, the prosecutor benefits significantly from the presence of FA writer Edmund Wong, who creates a character as interesting as any that Yan has played before. He also prevents the long stretches of the film explaining the Hong Kong judicial system from becoming too dull. The courtroom aspect covers around 75% of the film, and after a while the legal-laden back and forth between the lawyer and the judge does get a little tiring, especially during the second act. However, the fantastic fight scenes that are peppered throughout make this film engaging and thrilling, with highlights including an innovative opening police bust and an epic climactic fight on a train. Indasun Dias Deed Chits. These moments, you can tell why is such an international star. The choreography is fantastic. Sequences rival anything achieved in the John Wick series, and there are moments where you genuinely don't know how they've pulled it off so seamlessly. If the film had been more of the violence and less of the court, it could have risen to even higher heights. Visually, there are a number of unexpected shot choices throughout. In the opening fight scene, the camera snaps between more conventional camera work and an incredible shot from Yen's perspective for no reason other than looking extremely cool. The orchestral music works well to motivate the scenes, and the sound design adds that extra layer of oomph to the punches thrown. I've previously described Donnie Yen as a Chinese Gary Cooper, projecting a calm, unshakable integrity that endures in the midst of chaos. His outings as IP Man and more recently as John's blind, but still lethal-free Naomi and John Wick, for make the point solidly. At A in The Prosecutor, Yan stars as a tough cop who grows frustrated with the legal system that lets too many violent people elude the consequences of their crimes. Despite all the cops endure to get them arrested and indicted after a particularly aggravating enforcement failure, he quits the force and spends 7 years in school to qualify for joining other ranks of the autonomous part of the system. The premise cuts down on the usual amount of action in Yeden's movies, but still leaves room for a few particularly gratifying fight sequences. In his first case, Yen is so concerned about the possibly wrongful conviction of a young felon that his courtroom efforts during the appeal seem more like those of defense counsel than prosecutor, incurring the enmity of the judge and his bosses due. But true to Yin form, he just might be onto something and starts convincing colleagues to help in the investigation. The plot is somewhat more convoluted than necessary, and the courtroom scenes lack the tension and excitement levels one would hope for in any of those dramas. Yan has a few eloquent moments, but they almost seem out of place compared to the rest of that tepid side of the proceedings. Despite these flaws from Donnie the director and the amount of time he's stuck in a suit and tie rather than in a uniform or fight in civvies, his fans should be satisfied with the Donnie the actor on display in this production. The Prosecutor in Cantonese Chinese with English subtitles debuts in digital formats 4K and Blu-ray on Tuesday, May 27, 2025 from WGO USA. It's a sort of fair righting wrong. Anna the Prosecutor with Donnie Yen playing the titular prosecutor with martial arts skills who doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. However, unlike when Bio's similar role in the aforementioned 1986 action movie, Yan's Fakaiho used to be police officer who carries the same cop instinct even after practicing law. Yan, who also pulled double duties behind the scenes as the director and a co-producer, isn't remaking a writing wrong other than sharing the similar tone and feel of action movie tropes combined with a legal thriller. Working from Thea IP Mona Quadrilogy, Edmund Wong's screenplay, which is loosely based on a real-life case in Hong Kong, follows Falk handling his first case involving a young man, Ma Cockett, a summit within Mason Fun being accused of drug trafficking. His defense lawyers, O Pac-Man, Julian Cheung, and layman Shirley Chan urged him to plead guilty for a chance to reduce his sentence. Fox soon suspects something isn't right about the case, prompting him to run his own investigation with the help of his young police pro. A Tilda copyright guild, the copyright Mick Chong, aka Michael Chong Tinfu. This, of course, gives Yan an excuse, a reason to trade verbal jabs with a flurry of fists and a jump back kick. Yan knows this well because most fans and audiences alike wouldn't be so interested in showing up to watch his movie without some fights involved. Imagine if Yan embraces the prosecutor or a wholeheartedly as a legal thriller. That will be a little test of whether Yan is good enough to pull off a non-action dramatic performance. Believe it or not, this marks the first time Yan has played the role of a prosecutor in a movie. He has that stern, no-nonsense appearance who looks the part and such a role can be challenging since it relies heavily on one's acting prowess. Well, the good news is that he doesn't come across as stiff or awkward, donning the robe on the wig during the trial, even giving an engaging performance as a fiercely determined prosecutor. It also helps that he is backed by solid supporting turns ranging from Kent Chang's Fox colleague and pupil master Bouting to Francis Tsang's chief prosecutor Yu and Michael, who was seen stealing high court judge. I was initially worried about risking Julian Cheung in a cast against type character as the shady legal executive Opak a rare antagonist turned, that I'm glad he carries the role better than I thought. The first half's courtroom drama tropes benefit from a few reasonably engaging and even unexpectedly amusing verbal sparring moments. The latter is especially true during a trial scene revolving around Fox's stubbornly questionable approach that tests Michael, who is judge's patience. As expected, the movie is filled with legal jargon, but Wong's screenplay is pretty much streamlined to make it easier to follow. As an action movie, we get to see Yen beating the crap out of anybody involved in the criminal activities. Except I noticed Yen doesn't go all out like he used to. Given the fact he's already 61 years old, it feels like it's asking too much of him to maintain the same physical ferocity seen in a SPL, a Flashpoint, and a IP mono era. Besides, he even addresses his age factor on 1 or 2 occasions, which also indirectly reflects his own action star status at the current point of his career. This resulted in Yen choosing to hold back during his fight scenes, even though we still get to see some of his trademark punches, kicks, and grappling moves. Even with the sense of physical restraints, Akanina's action direction along with Yan's stunt team still manages to impress with visceral fight set pieces, and Yan himself insisted on filming in camera with no CGI. Highlights include the whine against many henchmen during a nighttime rooftop brawl, and the climactic empty bar fight scene. Making use of the confined train compartments, metal poles, seats, and windows, as Yan takes down a few henchmen, and the top right-hand man, played by his regular stunt member and actor Yu Kong. Yan's dynamic and fluid camera work deserves equal mention, reminding me of his frequent collaborator Wilson Yip's shooting style in the action scenes. Earlier, there's the attention-grabbing opening scene as Yen stretching his creativity reminiscent of the Bad Boys ride as Firsterson's shooter game aesthetics during the police raid. The Prosecutor, which reportedly cost $30 million Hong Kong dollars, equally excels in its immersive sound design and excellent technical achievements all. Around the law for the aphorism is an ass it shouldn't be, despite its primary function as a provider of order and justice. It is as easily manipulated as it broken occasionally at the same time. This is due to those not being above corruption, thinking they are above the law. Police detective Success Sun, Kaiho Donnie Yen, is injured during the bust. A criminal gang, yet the gang leader is not prosecuted due to insufficient evidence from his gang refusing to implicate him. Kaiho becomes so disillusioned with the support the police get in court. He quits the force and studies law instead. 7 years later, after passing his exams, Kaiho joins the Department of Justice as a prosecutor under the instruction of Bang Ken Cheng. His first case involves Ma Cocket Mason Fun, a teenager arrested for drug trafficking when he simply rented out his address to make some money, never opening the parcels. His lawyers Lee Man Shirley Chan and OPAC man Julian Cheung suggest a guilty plea means a smaller sentence, but once in prison, Cockett learns he was shafted. Kaiho is suspicious of this and investigates, uncovering connections to people who'd rather he didn't pry. Don't be fooled by the still shiny dark hair, smooth facial skin, and ability to kick ass. Donnie Yen is in his 60s and is beginning to realize it. Ina the Prosecutor Aeon has managed to tie in his ongoing battle with Father Time as an action star with a subplot of this Hong Kong crime thriller. To elaborate, Kaiho admits to his younger successor at the police force. He moved on from law enforcement to let the next generation do the heavy lifting, and he closes the case. Based on the real-life case from 2016 of teenager Makan, if you're going to change the names, at least make an effort. Accused of drug trafficking and advised to take the fall by his legal counsel. One might wonder if there needs to be any action which is actually valid. Yan himself said it was hard to combine the two genres, opting to employ them as replacement for aggressive dialogue so they have a cogent and emotional relevance to the story. It's going to be purely subjective if Yen gets it right. Personally, whilst I enjoyed them, I'm a sucker for a good procedural court drama and enjoyed that a little more. The theme of the integrity of the justice system is laid on pretty thick in the opening act. Kai-ho in a neck braces giving evidence against a smug criminal whilst his lawyer uses unfortunate truths born from the mayhem of the situation to get him acquitted. Later, Kai-ho buying. Chief Prosecutor Yub Francis and others are with the Secretary for Justice Liza Wang. The whole scene is full of jingoistic rhetoric on the moral obligation of the legal system. It clumsily suggests the law is flawed in Hong Kong, but they strive to be fair, etc. In the day, Kai-ho heroically reiterates this in his closing address. All that is missing is the rousing ovation from the court, which I'm sure Hollywood would have included. Returning to the story, Cocket's grandfather, Ma Lakong, files an appeal after learning of the deceit. Sheen and Pac-Man are in the dock but successfully twist everything, so Cocket goes down for 27 years. Kai-ho teams up with Ma, learning how Cocket came to have access to a lawyer, like She-Man, and its lateral connection with dangerous rival drug, Lord Sang-Ru and Tong Mark Chang. Very likely this is where the true story ends and the fiction takes over. Worth mentioning as this new direction comes across as being from another film. The characters may remain largely the same, but the tone and mood changes, notably from being more action-heavy. What began as a potent human moral drama turns into a violent, choppy crime flick with the introduction of the true villains. We can speculate as to whether Yan and writer Edmund Wong didn't have enough faith in the courtroom drama holding audience interest for those who see Yen as a genre star, or if the real story didn't extend beyond it. Basic premise to fill 2 hours. In all fairness, we do get the best of both worlds, and Yan does manage to maintain a sense of balance between the two. The problem lies in the execution. Salient points of information are often spliced into a scene at odd junctures, disrupting the narrative flow, akin to someone relating a story and remembering a crucial factor long after its spot has passed. This occurs more in the second half, where the script is more focused with the drug gang subplotter in the action. It also doesn't help that the avalanche of new faces causes confusion as who is working for whom, resulting in more questions than answers. Although Yan is still not ready to hang up his action hero boots just yet with some nifty fights here, one can see where a Spritler double takes over in more demanding spots. Since Yen is also directing, this allows him to focus on his dramatic acting. Here he proves he can handle a role that requires little to no fighting. At a scene where he refuses to drink an obscenely priced glass of wine is quietly impactful, wisely surrounding himself with a strong support cast. One area Yan does exhibit growth is as a director his second time following the co-directed Sakura, an uninspiring CGI. A fantasy Yan shows scant reliance on such excess here beyond the fights one, of which includes a pause sequence boasting an aptitude for framing and composition, though an over-fondness for drone shots is also present. He still adheres to some established crime thriller staples, but for his first two genres for the price of one film. The Prosecutor only appeared on my radar after YouTube's biggest film critic Chris Stuckman reviewed it a few months back. Donnie Yen has kicked monumental amounts of ass in the blockbusters that he has appeared in The Return of Xander Cage, Rogue One, and most recently John Wick Chapter 4, but criminally, I've yet to explore his Hong Kong filmography. Titles like IP Man, SPL, Killzone, Iron Monkey, Dragon, and Heroa are still on my watch list. The Prosecutor sees a poor young man, Ho Yung Fong, get wrongly charged with drug trafficking after being deceived. An ex-detective turned public prosecutor, Yan, investigates the case, uncovers a corrupt lawyer team scheme, and restoes justice despite obstruction from evil forces. The Prosecutor wasn't quite what I expected, and unfortunately, despite being familiar to other superior films in the courtroom police procedural subgenre, it falls into convolution at points and stretches of their, dull melodrama, and only really sparks due to Yen's commitment to drama. He really gives his all here in the hammy antagonists. It's not bad at all. Perfectly serviceable material, but far from compelling. Clocking in at nearly 2 hours, it does overstay its welcome somewhat. And throughout my mind, I kept thinking, there's a killer 9100 minute within this. I should clarify, it's a killer full in action, a flick. And my God, the handful of set pieces are awesome, creative, and equally comic book stylized. The opening set piece is a crossover of Call of Duty Hardcore Henry and the Raid with kicks and punches that land like explosions. This is followed by a barmy hockey stick beatdown, a bar roof glass smashing brawl, and an utterly savage and intense claustrophobic train cart beat down. All great stuff, in masterfully choreographed with intense swinging and creative camera work. Just needed more of it. Performance-wise, as mentioned, Donnie Yen is very committed to the drama as well as the action, and he gives a strong lead performance. The rest of the cast are fine with the group with behind-the-scenes villains hamming it up, especially Ray Lu as a demented Cambodian drug lord, and Con Law as the young defendant's uncle, and Mukchung Tin Fu as Fox Yan's subordinate. But the action's hot, but the dramatic temperature varies in The Prosecutor, a flashy combination of Hong Kong crime story and legal drama starring and directed by Adona. IP Man series John Wick. Chapter 4. The veteran action star is convincing and charismatic as a cop, who quits the force to become a crusading Department of Justice prosecutor, but is let down by a screenplay that's prone to boats of melodrama in and out of the courtroom. Entertaining enough despite its flaws. The Prosecutor has topped the Hong Kong box office for 2 weeks thus far since opening on December 21st, and ought to perform well in limited US theatrical release from January 10th. Containing less action than a regular Donnie Yen film, and with his character delivering lines such as, "I'm getting old, I can't catch thieves anymore," and "I just got old" as a reason for his career change. The Prosecutor sparked speculation that Yen's days in action roles might be drawing to a close. The star has scotched all such conjecture with an upcoming slate including IP Man 5, an untitled John Wick spin-off video game, adaptation Sleeping Dogs, and Flashoint Resurgence, a sequel to his 2007 action hit Flashoint, still delivering top-notch fighting and action scenes at the age of 61. While looking 10 years younger, Yen is in fine form as Fak Kaiho, a cop who quits the force in 2017 after watching one too many crooks use legal loopholes to avoid conviction. A quick montage shows Fox studying for 7 years and joining the Department of Justice after obtaining a law degree. His first assignment is prosecuting Ma Cockett Mason Fun, a naive young man pressured by his legal team into pleading guilty to drug charges despite his innocence. With his cop's instincts aroused, Vox smells a rat and decides to dig deeper into Ma's case. After talking to Ma's devoted and desperately poor grandfather, Uncle Ma Lo Kong, who rescued his grandson from a shocking life as the child of drug-addicted parents, Falk becomes convinced that Ma, who now faces 27 years in the clink, is the Psy in a major drug trafficking operation. The first half of the screenplay by regular IP Man collaborator Edmund Wong effectively balances Fox detective work with court proceedings that bring him into conflict with Alu Dodge Chief Prosecutor Yun Lap Francis Ang and trial judge George Michael Huace, who tells he's shooting himself in the foot by calling wise lawyers incompetent and insisting on a retrial of the defendant he has just successfully prosecuted. Though it's hard to imagine such flamboyant and colorful exchanges taking place in a real courtroom, it's still good to watch Yen sparring with 82-year-old legend whose late career Purple Patch continues with a sizable part here, and his starring role in Hong Kong's newly crowned all-time box office champion, The Last Dance. Sure enough, Vol finds evidence of Ma's slick lawyer, Lee Man Shirley Chan, and her oily assistant Opax, Man Julian Cheung providing legal representation for businesses run by Lai, Adam Pak, a restorator closely connected to Tong Mark Chang and Sang Ray Lu, and drug lords in the classic tradition of garishly dressed, blinged-up luxury yacht-toning Hong Kong crime movie villains at this point courtroom proceeding ings take a back seat to action sequences, including a terrific rooftop encounter between Falk and dozens of goons and a scintillating smackdown on an empty or subway train in which Falk disposes of hordes of henchmen before squaring off with hulking heavily tattooed killer Kim Hung Aya with the swing toward action. The film loses its sharpness as illegal inhuman drama. The unfortunate plight of Ma and his grandfather tips into melodrama, and the film doesn't offer the kind of gripping and detailed look at Hong Kong's British-developed legal structure as recent features such as the sparring partner in Jack Hang's 2023's smash hit, A Guilty Conscience. The view is more simplistic here and sometimes contradictory, though that could also be seen as being balanced and treading carefully so as to not ruffle censors at times. Vogue appears like a crusader who wants to question the system that leaves victims like poor innocent man in its wake. At others, he makes clunky inspirational speeches, such as when he tells veteran Dodge colleague Bao Ding, Ken Chang, that our work is like an eternal, brilliant light. It shines the glory and fairness of justice into the hearts of the people as a Donnie Yen vehicle that showcases the star's still amazing physical skills and moves at a pacey clip for almost 2 hours. The prosecutor has the storytelling energy and visual panache to smooth over the rough spots. A lush orchestral score by first-time feature composer Kroy Cho and Chan Joyce's outstanding costume design are further highlights of this entertaining enterprise. A lovely cameo appearance by Yen's father, Clister Chen, as Fox's father adds a nice personal touch. Is it just me, or is Donnie Yen making a bit of a niche for himself, riffing on when Baiao's 1980s era during the 2010s? We got a 2-part remake of the Iceman Katha with the Iceman Rita and Iceman the Time Traveler. And now in the 2020s, we have The Prosecutor. While not announced as a remake, the parallels to be 1986 classic writing. Wrongs are glaring. Both feature a prosecutor who also happens to know kung fu, where is a righting wrong. Dubiously endorsed vigilante justice at a prosecubiously endorses the beating of mothers who are hopeless drug addicts. We even get a car park set action scene in both productions with Yan ducking and diving to avoid being hit by a vehicle much the same way Yan Bo did almost 30 years ago. Since his disastrous attempt to move into purely dramatic territory with 2022's lamentably polar rescue, in the last couple of years, Yen made the wise decision to stick to his action roots, notably also stepping into the director's chair for his 2023 ADUI Gods and Semi-Devils adaptation of Sakura. He remains in the director's chair for The Prosecutor, returning to the contemporary actioner, not counting his supporting role, Lena Johnwick. Chapter 4, that feels synonymous with the Yen brand of action for the first time since 2020 on a raging fire, opening with Yen, is a cop letting an air raid in an abandoned construction site. He and his team are ambushed by an armed and dangerous enemy, leading to a stellar action scene that incorporates some innovative camera work and first-person perspective shots. The sequence says in the prosec straight out of the gates, and at this point the title hasn't even appeared on screen. Due to a lack of evidence, though, the criminal ultimately walks free when tried in court, which means only one thing. We must watch Yen go on a law school studying rampage presented as a montage that doubles up as the opening credits. When they're over, it's now 7 years later, and Yan has become at the prosecutor. Decked out in a tailored gray suit and impeccable hair, Yan's prosecutor is as virtuous as they come, solving murder cases on his first day in the office while making friends with his new colleagues, and proudly declaring that our job is prosecution, to have a trial, to find the truth, and to convict. Did I mention that it's based on a true story? His steadfast belief in the justice system is questioned, though, when handed his first case involving a teenager accused of drug trafficking, with the proposals of the defense lawyers seemingly geared more towards a quick outcome than a fair trial played by Julian Cheung. Death Notice A mob story, and Shirley Chan Cryptor Storm, a love suddenly Yan's obsessive quest for obsessive. The truth soon puts him at longer heads with the pair as well as the wider Department of Justice community. That broader community is a significant contributor as to why the Prosec works so well with Yan, surrounding himself with an impressive cast of Hong Kong talent from Ken Chang, Run and Kill, a walk on fire as the experienced prosecutor he's paired with, Francis Sang, Customs Frontline, a Death Stranding as his superior, and Michael Hu the Private Eyes, a Rob B. Hood as a seasoned judge to villainous turns from Rue Operation Bangkok, a Thunder Run, and Mark Chang Gongtown, a invisible target while there's no doubt of the prosecution. Show the veteran cast, bring a gravitas to proceedings that mean you're never just waiting for the next action scene. That's just as well, since anyone clocking into the prosecing in action. Extravaganza will likely walk away, disappointed Yan smartly tuned into Hong Kong cinema's current streak of successful courtroom thrillers like High of the Sparring Partner and A Guilty Conscience, and has created something which feels at once familiar and fresh at proceedings. Don't delve into the complexities as much as the mentioned titles. We do spend a significant part of the runtime in the courtroom, complete with on-screen definitions explaining the step in the legal process the particular hearing is related to. Thankfully, the legal banter is engaging and serves as the main driver to propel the narrative forward. One that equally thankfully sees Yen frequently find himself in moments of danger outside of the courtroom, usually that involve him having to break out flying kicks and punches to the face. There's a welcome, lack of pretension to the why the prosec is structured that feels like a hark back to the glory days of HK action cinema. Sure, the courtroom drama is meant to be taken seriously, but there's also no hesitation to segue into a scene that requires Yen to fend off a small army of nightclub security staff like a one-man wrecking ball. He could almost be playing the same character as he was in a Special ID, now a decade later and more mellowed. Although in one action scene, we still get the Donnie Yen crazy smile that I think debuted in a Special ID like Sakura and once more takes a step back from choreographing himself, which he hasn't done since Raging Fire, this time handing over to his action team member Takento Aki. Following a similar path to Kenji Tanigaki, Aki has worked extensively in both Hong Kong. He was part of the choreography team on both the Special Ida and Enter the Fat Dragon and Japan choreographing the action in the likes of Fajin Dihana and Thea Haya franchise. Here, his touch brings a welcome freshness to Yen's distinctive action chops, focusing more on brutal efficiency over complex exchanges, with many of the fights taking place in close quarters or against multiple attackers. Heads are rammed between doors and steel poles used liberally, all delivered with the sense of kinetic energy as the surrounding environment is used to stay out of harm's way. The final fight set on a train is a highlight, washing away the bad taste of the similarly set finale in Iceman, the time traveler with Yan attempting to protect a witness while contending with a pair of attackers, including a riff on Hammer Girl at a Hammer Triad. If anything, I only wish Yan's final opponent came with more emotional weight, with frequent collaborator Yukang Wu, a big brother, appearing as a hired lackey for a brutal face-off. It delivers on all cylinders from a choreography perspective, and while the narrative attempts a backstory by having Kong deliver a throwaway line, revealing it was Yen responsible for him serving time in Cambodia, it fails to create a meaningful connection. It is of course a trade-off of Yen playing a prosecutor, as due to China's strict censorship guidelines, there was no way we were ever going to see him lay the B8 down on any of the real villains behind the plot. So this way we still get a final one-on-one fight, which any Donnie Yen action movie needs this time with added lore-related onliners. It just comes at the cost of not really having any catharsis to it. Amusingly, the only other time we're blatantly reminded of the censorship requirements is during the traditional closing scene mug shot stills showing how all the criminals receive jail time for their crimes, which includes the criminal from the initial scene that I'm sure most audiences will have forgotten about. But since it needs to be clear that every India who committed a crime has to pay for it, regardless of their relevance to the plot or screen time, we're told he committed another crime 8 years later. And this time he was successfully found guilty. I'm sure audiences everywhere will be relieved. At almost 2 hours longer, the prosecutor could have benefited from a little trimming, but overall it's easily Yen's most mature work as a director to date, showing a level of restraint and balance that's been lacking in his directorial efforts so far. The fact that it delivers his best contemporary action performance since 2014's A Kung Fu Zhongli, a whole 10 years. Ego is the icing on top, proving that it's still possible to innovate in Hong Kong action cinema in 2024, a fact that makes it worth checking out alone. AOA new Donnie Yen film is usually worth getting excited over, as we can expect plenty of bone-crunching fight scenes, and The Prosecutor is no different. Yan also directs, and this is one of his best films in years. Inspired by true events, The Prosecutor has Donnie playing Foul Zai, who a former cop turned prosecutor trying to find justice for a young man who has been incarcerated for 27 years due to drug possession with corruption at every turn. Falk relies on his particular set of skills to find justice while breaking some limbs along the way. The prosecutor has an engaging story with Yen, giving a powerful performance as a man trying to go the right thing. Some may find the earlier court scenes hurt the pacing, but they are essential to set up the story and characters. There is still no shortage of fight scenes, with Donnie Yen proving he's still one of the best in the business. A final showdown on a subway train is a particular highlight, but personally, it's when Chak Stao is battling endless goons on a rooftop, which is classic Donnie. Julian Cheung is wonderfully smug as OPAC Man. He's a great character, though, and I don't want to say anything else about him due to spoilers. The music score is swelling and heroic when it needs to be, and works well in the action and dramatic scenes. Overall, The Prosecutor feels like a passion project for Donnie Yen, and it has the right amount of drama and action. The first half is a little slow and may put some viewers off, But the second half ramps up the action to make this one of Donnie's best of films in years. The Prosecutor finds martial arts legend Donnie Yen stepping into dual roles as both leading man and director, delivering a film that combines the intensity of courtroom drama with flashes of exhilarating action. Yen plays Phao Kai, a former police officer who transitions into a career as a prosecutor after becoming disillusioned with criminals evading justice through legal loopholes. Armed with a law degree rather than a police-issue service weapon, Falk takes interest in the case of Ma Cockett, Mason Fun, a young man accused of drug trafficking who accepts a plea deal under dubious circumstances. Determined to see actual justice prevail rather than speed things along for the convenience of overworked prosecutors and self-important judges, Falk elects to open an investigation of his own. But what begins as a straightforward legal battle soon spirals into a broader conspiracy involving a sprawling drug syndicate, corrupt lawyers, and powerful criminals who will stop at nothing to cover their tracks. The film setup cleverly juxtaposes Falk's investigative instincts with his newfound role in the courtroom, offering a refreshing take on Yan's modern-day action persona. At 61, Yan imbues with the sense of world at the weariness, delivering lines like, "I'm getting old. I can't catch thieves anymore," with an authenticity that reflects both his character's evolution and possibly Yan's feelings about his own career. Yet his age seems little more than an afterthought when the action takes over. Yan's physical prowess remains extraordinary, with his fight choreography and stunt work rivaling performers significantly younger. The film's action sequences are a feast for genre aficionados, blending classic Hong Kong martial arts choreography with modern cinematic techniques. A rooftop brawl against bands of thugs showcases Yen's ability to command large-scale fights, while a multi-level chase through a parking garage and a tense subway showdown against a menacing assassin, Kang Yu, a mainstay of Yen's stunt team for the past decade, provide thrilling bursts of kinetic energy, perhaps drawing influence from his involvement team at John Wick. Chapter 4, Yen employs a variety of dynamic camera techniques, including drone shots, POV angles, and tight handheld footage while staying true to his roots with the preference for practical stunts over CGI opening shootout. Notwithstanding ensuring the action feels mostly tangible and immediate, beyond the spectacle at the Prosecutor weaves in a thoughtful exploration of justice and morality, albeit with more than a touch of melodrama loosely inspired by a real-life case. The film examines systemic failures in the legal system, particularly through the plight of Mayet and his impoverished grandfather, Lao Kong, highlighting the harsh realities of a system that punishes the powerless while enabling the powerful and perhaps echoing broader frustrations in Hong Kong's current socio-political climate. Falk's dual role as a fighter for truth in both the courtroom and the streets underscores these themes. Even if his numerous inspirational speeches veer into heavy-handed territory, Yan is supported by a stellar ensemble cast featuring numerous veterans of Hong Kong cinema, including Kent Chang as the veteran prosecutor who takes under his wing and is immediately dismayed as his new colleague's brazen disregard for typical Department of Justice protocol reaction shots of his eyes nearly bulging out from beneath his barrister's wig, while Falk verbally spars with the grand judge. Michael Huace, another screen legend, are pure comedic gold. Elsewhere, Ray Liu and Mark Shang are delightfully flamboyant as a pair of menacing drug kingpins, and Julian Cheung provides the requisite sleaze as the money-laundering lawyer at the center of their operation. For a long time, Donnie Yen fans expecting a non-stop action extravaganza at the Prosec might feel like something of a departure, leaning heavily on character development and courtroom intrigue in its first half. But when the fists and feet begin to fly with increasing frequency, they do so with an intensity that reminds us why Yen remains one of the most electrifying action stars in cinema and serves as a testament to his enduring popularity. The film may simplify its exploration of the legal system and its flaws, but it does a commendable job of bridging the gaps between hard-hitting action and thoughtful, if sometimes overwrought, drama, reaffirming Yen as a force to be reckoned with, both in front of and behind the camera. He renowned Donnie Yen directs, co-produces, and stars in The Prosecutor at the 80th film from the 61-year-old legend of Hong Kong action cinema. Of course, fans know that Yen has frequently crossed over to the United States, starring in such movies as Blade 2, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and most recently, John Wick, Chapter 4. Yet in many ways, the prosecutor sees Yen at home in his comfort zone, adding another sturdy action thriller to his impressive RA till the copyright sub-yem. The prosecutor sprinkles in ingredients from an assortment of genre. It's as much a legal thriller as it is a crime thriller. It has a healthy amount of courtroom drama while also featuring the signature action scenes that have been highlights of Yen's remarkable 40-plus-year career. At the same time, the movie takes a critical look at such weighty subjects as class, corruption, and the justice system to go along with its impressive visual pache. Redeeming with screenwriter Edmund Wong from the IP Man quadrology, The Prosecutor takes its inspiration from a true case. Yan plays Fa Kaiho, a police officer transferred from the force after a case goes bad. He's assigned to the Department of Justice where he's to serve as a prosecutor, under the leadership of the seasoned Baoing Ken Cheng. Fak's first case involves a young man named Might Fun, Hoyu Mason, who was accused of drug trafficking after unknowingly lending his address to a local syndicate that uses parcels to import cocaine and contraband. Fak suspects the young man was manipulated and doesn't deserve to be prosecuted. What Kit's defense attorneys, Pacman, Julian Cheung and Lyman Shirley Chan, convince their client to plead guilty, assuring him it will result in a reduced sentence and barely any jail time. But it quickly becomes evident that Kit's attorneys aren't giving him a fair shake. That prompts Fall to begin his own investigation, which puts him at odds with both the defense and his own team of prosecutors. Even more after the syndicate's involvement becomes clear, Falk has to fall back on his old police training after both he and Kid become the gang's chief targets. While the story employs a few common courtroom tropes, the script is smart enough to keep us engaged, and it's helped by the performances from Yan and the really strong supporting cast. We get lots of legal wrangling and verbal jostling both in the courtroom and behind the scenes, as Fox colleagues push for him to forget his righteous crusade and fall in line with the system. It all adds several nice layers to the drama. And of course, there's the action. While maybe not as plentiful as in many other films from Yan's catalog, The Prosecutor still treats us to the sunlight salt action scenes. From the blistering warehouse shootout to open the film to a ferocious subway fight sequence near the end. All are thrillingly choreographed and sharp reminders that even in his 60s, Donnie Yen remains a star of the genre. And it's that star power that drives The Prosecutor even when it tries to juggle a little too much. Two of my favorite TV shows from the 1990s were Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The West Wing. The long-standing joke viewers of both shows used to ban was one of these shows is a fantasy about a group of competent, funny people who fight evil on a regular basis and win. And the other show is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. No one really thought of the West Winger was an actually accurate representation of life in the Oval Office, especially now that the current occupant is a Huace's flanging orangutan. And we finally realize that if the worst people in the world get together with the worst of intentions, the worst people will vote for them with hilarity ensuing for the rest of the world. Democracy be damned. But at least that, adhere to some real-world aesthetics and physics. This here film of the Prosecutor era is possibly one of the least believable legal dramas I've ever seen in my life. And I say that as someone who knows nothing about the law in Hong Kong and how it is practiced. The funniest, absolute funniest part is that this is allegedly based on a true story. Ponder if you will just set up. There is a policeman called Yikshashur X. Donnie Yen and he and his fellow cops take down an entire gang in an abandoned, factory or something. They take them all the way down, as in the opening gun battle is spectacular and vicious, even resorting to first-person perspective like it's a shooter. However, even though the boss of the gang is arrested at the scene and merely killed a cop who Fox saved at the last minute, resulting in him being in traction, he gets off because of top-notch lawyering. Fallex becomes so despondent at this result that he quits the Hong Kong police force, goes to uni to study law, and then 8 years later becomes a junior prosecutor because he's certain he could do better. Donnie Yen is in his 60s, but I guess that doesn't mean his character has to be in his 60s too. And while that may sound implausible, we haven't really even gotten close to the aspects of this that make it seem less based in the real world and a crouching tiger, hidden dragon. On his first case as prosecutor, Falk is meant to be prosecuting a young guy to whom drugs were sent in the mail. He claims at first that he just let someone else borrow his mailing address, and he had nothing to do with the importation of the drugs. Two defense lawyers pressure the young chap, Ma Cockett Mason, Fun into pleading guilty for a lesser sentence to which he initially agrees. But he then changes his mind when he finds out that he'll still do 10 years or so. That seems pretty rough to someone who hasn't done anything wrong. But then it would seem pretty rough to a guilty person too. The kid's granddad, Uncle Ma Lao Kong, routinely beats people in order to extract justice, and no one even criticizes his actions because of their deep reverence for old people. Falk admires him so much and is so moved by the humbleness of his living circumstances that he leaves a bunch of money for him under some papers. Throughout all of this, with absolutely no evidence, Falk is convinced that he shouldn't be prosecuting this kid for this crime. And yet, there's nothing presented as to why he would think that as yet. Of course, it comes later, but at this stage, you're wondering why, since he has no legal basis for his opinion, he's going on about it. His co-workers think he's incompetent. The head of the Office of Prosecutions at the Department of Justice thinks he's an idiot, and no one supports him or compliments him on how handsome he is ever. The only people that believe him are his former cop co-workers who still do everything he says, even if he hasn't worked with them for 8 years. If someone I work with moves on, I've usually forgotten their names after about 5. And if they called me up for a favor, I'd be like, "Who the are you again?" Thanks to Falk's entirely bizarre courtroom antics, which often involve the defense and prosecution lawyers in horsehair wigs and gowns yelling in English to emphasize important points, the aide gets sentenced to 27 years instead of the 10 he was going to cop. Harsh. The system is harsh, but the system works bizarrely. Again, Fa constantly has violent run-ins with people, with gangs, with all sorts of crimes, and of course beats the crap out of them all because he's Donnie Yen. But you wonder, since this is based on a supposedly true story, whether there recently was a prosecutor in his 60s who beat up hundreds of people in the pursuit of someone he was meant to be prosecuting because he so believed in truth, justice, and the Hong Kong Chinese way. You could be smelling what this film is cooking right about now. In the past in Hong Kong, you might have had stories about corrupt cops, corrupt senior officials, corrupt lawyers, corrupt members of government, but not now. Oh no, not now. Now every script is vetted by the Hong Kong Film Censorship Authority through the Office of Film, Newspaper, and Article Administration, who decide if something can be shown or not. Key within all the criteria that justify what they do against what filmmakers want to do is some censor having to decide whether the exhibition of the film would be contrary to the interests of national security that is applied in such a way that anything that could be perceived as impacting on national security. And in case you're wondering, they're not talking about Hong Kong as in, if you depicted corrupt government officials, corrupt cops, etc., that could give Chinese citizens the impression that there are some government officials that are corrupt, and we cannot have people thinking that, because that would mean that members of the Communist Party of China are corruptible, and that wouldn't do like the Pope members of the party are infallible. They can do no wrong ever. No party member has ever done anything less than wrong. Even Mao, who killed tens of millions of his own people through ignorance or indifference, never did anything wrong. So, no cops do anything wrong or against the law in this flick. None of the prosecutors working as they do for the state do anything wrong. The judges who don't care about the results and who drink $10,000 bottles of wine don't do anything wrong. The only people who do anything wrong, as in commit crimes, are obvious Grims and a fair few foreigners, thrown into boot. Of the lawyers that are obviously corrupt, they are professional lawyers outside of the government sphere. Only lawyers working for themselves could be corrupt, never for the government. Why is this particularly gling to me in this instance? Well, the notion that there are prosecutors in Hong Kong now, right? Now, who see justice as a bright, shining light that must be applied without fear or favor, and shared widely and freely to the benefit of all. In a place where people are routinely convicted for protesting for civil freedoms from the party masters far away in Beijing before they're even arrested is just ludicrous. This terrible legal drama is little more than propaganda for the state, reassuring adult populace that the state is always correct and always does the right thing. The innocent are revenged, the guilty are G, and the citizens can just go back to trusting that their masters have their best interests at heart. It would be gling, coming out of any nation, but coming from an authoritarian state, well, it's extra insulting for me. Donnie Yen, who's getting old, who's getting to that stage where even his on-screen personas say things like how they're getting too old to beat up hundreds of people at a time, wanted to make something that presumably wasn't wall-to-wall action. He wanted to do something dramatic where he would talk more with his mouth than with his fists. And yet, this dull legal drama doesn't have confidence in the quality of the dramatics on screen. Hence, the regular action interludes where Donnie truly shines. And yet, even they're not without their faults. A lot of stunned people sitting in for Donnie these days. The fights are over a bit quicker as well. Donnie has been mocked, celebrated as being an absolute titan of a fighter for decades, but someone who's maybe a bit wooden in his performances. He's fine, of course, but there are some scenes involving wooden furniture or wall paneling where he's a bit out of his league. He maybe should have had a word with his director, who might have been able to give him some acting tips. Oh, wait, no, that wouldn't work. He's the director. He made sure this towed the party line. And like any successful actor in Hong Kong or China, to continue to be so, he has to say what the party demands. There's no such place as Taiwan. There have never been protests about anything in Hong Kong. Nothing happened at Dianan Square. The party is good. The party is great. We surrender our will as of the state. A real sense of creation that embusts the opening. Yeden's latest directorial effort where he plays police detective Faith. The film opens with him pursuing an armed robbery gang, leading to the best action set piece. It not only acts as a real demonstration of Yen's martial art history, which at 61 years old still impresses, but also of his skills as a craftsman. In this scene, Yen attempts to elevate the stakes by switching points of view in the middle of the action scene from the third person to first person. This could have failed, and yet it works so well that one wonders exactly why Yen hasn't directed many action movies in the past. We quickly get our answer because as impressive and meticulously choreographed as the action scenes may be at the story, doesn't feel like it's worth our investment. Yen, who directs the script written by Edmund Wong, is incredibly self-referential through the figure he portrays, constantly discussing his age as the primary reason why he can't beat people up the way he did anymore. Y, and by extension F, decides to switch gears and play a character that is against the type of powerful martial artists he is known to portray on screen, most recently in Chad Stathakis. John Wick Chapter 4, after being badly injured from the film's opening gunfight, decides to work in the judicial system, most specifically as a prosecutor for the Department of Justice in isolation. This may prove to be a much calmer environment for Fall to exact justice without physically exhausting himself, or worse, getting even bigger bruises than he did in his last confrontation with criminals through the tutelage of veteran pupil master Baying and Chang. Fall is brought on to prosecute Ma Cockett Mason Fun, young teenager who has been charged with drug smuggling. The case sounds simple enough. BA has already pleaded guilty to avoid serious jail time and will likely get a reduced sentence if he admits his wrongdoings. Fowl and Ba initially fined. Nothing wrong with his testimony and think it's a rather straightforward legal matter. However, once and Gal Ma changes his plea and instead states he was pressured by barristers Opaque Man, Julian Cheung, and layman Shirley Chan to plead guilty because they told him he would for sure be locked up. Willie, the real perpetrator of the crime, Chang Wok Wing Locker Lam, has been fully exonerated. This puts A in a rather precarious situation since the prosecutors make the case for the state to lock up the defendant and prove without a reasonable doubt that Ma is guilty. However, and as Fogg explains to the grand judge, Michael Hu, the prosecution team must also bring the full picture of the case to the attention of the court, which complicates itself when an attempt on the lives of the prosecutor and Ma's grandfather, Lau Kong, occurs in a parking lot. In that regard, Fogg is not only a simple prosecutor, but he eventually acts as the judge, jury, and executioner of the case, demonstrating to us all that the ultimate purveyor of truth will always be justice. The Prosecutor is a fun enough time, thanks in no small part to action filmmaking skills. I was a bit worried that but Fong's script always brings an excuse to put Yan back in the middle of an action set piece where fighting acts as his only way out. It does seem a bit hypocritical for Yan to continuously say that he's too old and can't fight anymore, only for him to topple an endless swarm of security guards on a nightclub rooftop 2 scenes later. I do think that this is part of what makes the film work, even if the story leaves much to be desired. Many of its most emotional beats are telegraphed and can be seen a mile away, such as how the script repeatedly bludgeons the audience over the head that the specific character will die by always making them say variations of "I won't be around for long" because of their age. Even worse, extended flashbacks that depict Ma's dark childhood feel uncomfortably exploitative, not only in how the film depicts drug addiction, but child abuse. Ma's grandfather took custody of the boy because of her mother's drug addiction, sending her into a spiral of neglect and violence when she beats her son so violently that he had to be sent to the hospital. Uncle Ma's response is to kick the mother in the stomach. Would this have been a problem if the scene had been treated with seriousness and care? Some may debate on this, but that specific moment is played for laughs as an Inspector Lee King-Wei McChung. Tin Fu find it quite funny that a Node man would do this. That scene didn't sit well with me at all and lingered throughout most of Fatha Prosecutor's runtime. No matter the fun I had watching Yen kick all sorts of ass, the illegal commentary, while well-intentioned at first, slowly morphs into state-approved nonsense when it was never about exacting justice, but about showing how the system in place has always been good if people know how to use it. We even get a moment that resembles quite closely as the resigned today as president of the bank from Neil Breen's fateful findings that turn this compelling action drama into a whole lot of nothing. Because as predictable and as mawkish as the intrigue may get, and knows how to juggle three genres in one. The martial arts action were all seated in the theater for the police procedural and the courtroom drama. One of the three is more compelling than the others, but they're all effectively weaved together. And since Yan has always been a skillful performer beyond flashy action, his dedication to the police turned prosecutor role seems boundless. As a result of the Prosec ended up whining me over, despite the strong reservations I had with its story and thematic underpinnings. As the runtime progresses, the narrative begins to complexify itself, further adding more characters and legal conspiracies than a Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney game. Some of them may be over the top. Boot to the Prosec still ends up overcoming most of its shortcomings thanks to a game Donnie Yen behind the camera, crafting some truly nifty action set pieces that could rank high as some of the year's very best, and I'm easy to please put Donnie Yen in a situation where he's prone to fight, even in Soy Chinks of the Monkey King, where he's kink that kid and some verve and is well choreographed enough. It's a movie magic. This is no exception. A lawyer as an action hero isn't all that common in pop culture, but it's not a new idea, as fans of Daredevil will tell you. Donnie Yen take on the legal profession has him fighting like the blind Marvel hero. But as the title of the film indicates, Yan is a prosecutor, not a defense attorney like Matt Murdock. It's strange, then, that rather than have newly minted lawyer Fakaiho Yan going after a kingpin, like crime lord, the prosecutor follows the case of a young man who takes a plea deal for drug trafficking. The defendant Ma Cockett Mason, Fun Ho Yoon, pleads guilty. So a prosecuting attorney would barely need to break a sweat working on the case and can focus on going drinking after work. Prosecutor, however, used to be a cop, and his intuition tells him something is wrong, that my lawyer, Pac-Man Julian Cheung Lam, may have had an ulterior motive for telling the young man to plead guilty. Being a righteous individual, Fogg takes an unorthodox approach, grilling A on the stand as though he were the one on trial. What should have been an open and shut case turns into a lengthy investigation that gets the attention of criminal bosses, prompting them to deal with scam outside of court. While the prosecutor doesn't feature a superhero. As their devil does, the title character would fit right into the pages of a Marvel comic, and is able to walk away uninjured after crashing into the windshield of a moving vehicle. Falk may have swapped his badge and gun for a lawyer's robes, but he's an action hero through and through. The opening scene where Falk is still a cop is quite intense as Yen pairs a police riot shield with an assault rifle while battling a horde of gun runners. Yan directs himself with flair in the sequence, pulling the camera close to his character to an over-the-shoulder view, and then transitioning to a first-person perspective. Similarly, he takes advantage of drone technology in a couple of scenes later on, staging someone take action sequences that would have been difficult, if not impossible, to shoot using cranes and traditional 35mm cameras. While the action in, though, Prosecutor is impressively choreographed by Tanigaki Kenji, who last collaborated. With Yan on 2023's Sakura, it still falters when trying to establish an opponent who's a convincing physical threat with a hero. A problem that appears in pretty much any Donnie Yen vehicle one cares to name. The closest the film comes to having a word adversary for our hero is Kim Hung-Yu-Kang, a hulking killer who gets to show his toughness when he very improbably survives a long fall onto a car from several stories. He does not, though, get a one-man army scene as Yen does to show he's someone who could potentially take down the titular character. Where the prosecutor most closely resembles a daredevil tale is in its handling of the legal thriller portion of the story. That is to say, the courtroom wranglings are rudimentary, so no one is going to mistake them for anything written by David D. Kelly or the Law & Order team. We get the idea that the Hong Kong legal system is flawed and that those who understand it well enough can escape punishment while getting innocent people to take film goes, though keeping things simple so I can play both prosecutor and defender during the same speech, no less, while admonishing a non-nonsense judge who for some reason doesn't find the lawyer in contempt of court. Most viewers unfamiliar with the Hong Kong court system will be fairly forgiving towards the legal wranglings depicted in the movie, but those with greater knowledge of it will be less amused. One of the surprising aspects of this film is its metatextual reference to its star. In spite of his deceptively youthful appearance and his physical prowess, Donnie Yen is 61 years old and quite aware that he only has so many action films left in him. In The Prosecutor, his character actually says out loud that he couldn't carry on policing forever, that he switched from being a cop to a lawyer because he's getting old. Don't be surprised then if we get sequels to this film where Yan becomes less active on the streets and more focused on sparring in the courtroom. Datio Hong Kong phenomena. Donnie Yen returns to his cinematic rude scene of The Prosecutor. Yan takes on dual roles, both starring in and directing the gripping film inspired by a real legal case from Hong Kong's courtrooms. The story follows Fowley Huyan, a seasoned policeman turned prosecutor, as he tackles his first major case. The case revolves around a man who falsely confesses to drug trafficking after being framed. Convinced of the man's innocence, Foxy, who embarks on his perilous investigation, risking his career in life to uncover the truth and bring the real perpetrator to justice. Donnie Yen is a talent I've followed for decades, and like fine wine, he only gets better with age, if that's even possible. While his early career established him as an action and martial arts star, Yen has since evolved into a multifaceted dramatic actor with remarkable depth. Within The Prosecutor, he adds yet another impressive notch to his director's belt. The Prosec era is at its core a crime thriller, but like most of Yen's films, it also features plenty of martial arts action, and it's absolutely packed with it. The acting throughout is excellent by all the cast. Yen knows how to hit the dramatic chords perfectly. The film also gives the audience a look at what a trial is like in parts of China, which is worth admission. The villains in this film are overflowing with vile disdain, unrelenting, uncaring, and utterly ruthless fogey who must face them all while simultaneously building a case to defend the accused. The Prosecutor masterfully combines two distinct aspects, one steeped in intense drama and the other packed with relentless action. These genres blend seamlessly, keeping the audience on the edge of their seats. A good movie entertains, but a great movie stays with you. The Prosec is one such film that will undoubtedly feature on many of Yen's top numerous modern martial arts classics of the Hong Kong cinema, including Once Upon a Time in China to Iron Monkey before collecting more and more international fans as a Wing Chan teacher of the same name in the IP Man film series. A large worldwide audience was, meanwhile, by two Hollywood blockbusters in which he embodied the blind martial arts master on the term as Churret at the Registered Win Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and as a Kane in John Wick 4, who will soon also receive his own spin-off with John Wick Kane, where he plays along, he lets his fists fly, and so it is not surprising that he was with the original focus of The Prosecutor, who was initially planned as a rather conventional court drama, couldn't really do anything. But producer Raymond Wong did not give up. And for a few months, he actually had the Chinese superstar on board as his co-producer, director, and leading actor. But on the condition that the orientation of the film turns back on improperly, no sooner said than done, Donnie Yen occupied a few old Hong Kong action veterans in supporting roles and exchanged some verbally quick-witted dialogue passages against scenes with a genuine hand-edge action. This also and ship staged thriller jump somewhat undecided between the shattered courtezoom drama and furious choreographed martial arts trips. The police officer Phak Kaiho Donnie Yen cannot hold the acquit for the head of a gangster gang in court, so he acknowledges that police service studies law and is assigned his first tricky case 7 years later. The young man, Ho Yung Fong, frankly offered his address for the delivery of a package in which cocaine is located. When he is caught by the police, he advises him to defend himself guilty for drug smuggling. For drug smuggling, Fakaiho can be involved in the deal despite concerns. Even if the also accused drug dealer Chan Gua, Wing Koha Lam escapes a punishment. But soon Fakaiho is discovering that this case is only one of many in which the drug mafia uses the judicial apparatus for its purposes, and therefore decides to proceed against the criminals apart from the courtroom a broken bar. On a reception, judicial officers praise fast and resource-saving means sloppy legal proceedings in the case of expensive French red wine, and that right and justice are two pairs of shoes. Fakaiho also makes it clear during the procedure, and sometimes pointed, sometimes moral, and acids monologues and accompanied by pathetic strings, which reliably brings to the displeasure of the crusted Judge George Hu Michael, who the screenwriters Pu Lam and Deadman Wong, who already contributed some scripts to the IP Man series, are not tired of working auditively on the grievances in the Hong Kong legal system. And some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.